I stood at the edge of the cracked driveway, staring at the peeling white paint of the house I used to call home. The smell of overgrown grass mixed with the faint scent of laundry detergent drifting from an open window. My parents' voices echoed inside, sharp, muffled, and angry as ever. This time, though, I wasn't the scared 16-year-old girl they'd kicked out with nothing but a trash bag of clothes. This time, I was the landlord. The eviction notice was already tucked into my purse, the paper crisp and final. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a strange cocktail of nerves and power. I thought I'd feel triumphant, standing here on this porch they'd once slammed in my face. Instead, my chest felt heavy, and I couldn't stop replaying the night. Everything fell apart. Back then, I was just Mia. 16, awkward, quiet, and desperate to be loved. My parents, Claire and Tom, were strict and impossible to please. We lived in this small suburban town where everyone knew everything about everyone. My dad worked construction, my mom stayed home, and I was the kid who stayed late at school just to avoid going home. I remember curling up in the corner of my bedroom, paint peeling from the ceiling, carpet stained and worn, writing in a journal I'd hidden under the mattress. At school, I pretended everything was fine. I laughed at jokes, wore thrift store hoodies that smelled faintly of lavender dryer sheets, and lied through my teeth when teachers asked about my family. But the truth was, home wasn't safe. It was a battleground. Dinner was the worst. We'd sit around the chipped kitchen table, the overhead light flickering like a dying star. My dad would grumble about bills, my mom would critique my posture, my grades, or my face. "Why can't you be more like your cousin?" she'd say, her fork clinking against her plate. I'd learned to chew silently, eyes fixed on my food, because eye contact was dangerous. It always led to an argument. I envied kids with warm homes, soft couches, and parents who hugged them without a reason. My only escape was at my best friend Ella's house, where her mom would press cookies into my hands and ask about my day like she actually cared. Ella's home smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry. Mine smelled like bleach and cigarette smoke. The night they kicked me out started like any other. My dad had been drinking. I could smell the bitter scent of beer before I walked in the door. I'd gotten a C on a math test, a fact I'd tried to hide, but my mom found the paper crumpled in my backpack. "You're useless," she hissed, waving it in my face. I'd learned to stay quiet, but something in me snapped that night. "I'm trying," I whispered, my voice shaking. "You never see that I'm trying." My dad slammed his fist against the wall so hard a picture frame fell. "Get out of my house," he growled. I froze, thinking it was just another empty threat. But 5 minutes later, I was standing outside in the freezing dark, my hands gripping a plastic bag stuffed with random clothes, the sound of the deadbolt clicking behind me. I wandered the streets that night, my breath puffing white clouds into the icy air. My phone was dead, and I had nowhere to go. I ended up on Ella's porch, sobbing into my sleeve until she opened the door. "Mia, oh my God." She wrapped me in a blanket, her hands warm against my frozen skin. Her mom, Mrs. Thompson, didn't ask questions. She just made hot chocolate and said I could stay as long as I needed. For weeks, I slept in their guest room, terrified every knock on the door would be my parents coming to drag me back. They never came. Not a call, not a text, nothing. I was a ghost to them. And so, I learned to disappear. I got my first job at a cafe downtown, wearing an apron that smelled like coffee beans and vanilla syrup. I worked late nights, studied harder than ever, and applied for every scholarship I could find. By 18, I was living in a tiny apartment with secondhand furniture, teaching myself budgeting and survival. Ella's family became my real family. They showed up to my high school graduation, cheering louder than anyone else. I swore then that I'd never rely on anyone again, that I'd build a life so far from that house no one could hurt me, and I did. I clawed my way through community college, then landed an internship at a real estate company. I studied the market obsessively, spending nights scrolling through Zillow listings instead of sleeping. By 24, I was unrecognizable. I wore tailored blazers instead of thrifted hoodies, carried a laptop bag instead of a trash bag. I'd saved every penny, invested smartly, and eventually started my own property management company. My name wasn't just Mia anymore. It was Mia Richards, CEO. That's when I saw it, my childhood home, listed for sale. The peeling paint, the sagging porch, the memories etched into every corner. It was all still there. My hands shook as I signed the paperwork, transferring the deed into my name. I told myself it was just a business move, another rental property. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. 2 months after I bought it, I got a call from my property manager. "The tenants are late on rent," she said. "Want me to send a notice?" I hesitated, then asked for their names, Claire and Tom Richards. My breath caught. My parents were renting my house. They didn't even know I owned it. That night, I drove by, heart hammering as I saw their familiar silhouettes through the living room window. They looked older, smaller. The woman who once called me useless was now folding laundry on the same couch I'd cried on as a kid. I could have raised the rent. I could have evicted them immediately. Instead, I waited. I had my lawyer draft an official notice giving them 60 days to vacate. When I showed up in person to my mom's face went pale. "Mia?" she whispered, like she was seeing a ghost. My dad's jaw tightened, but he didn't say a word. "You're being evicted," I said, handing over the envelope. My voice didn't shake this time. "The landlord wants the house back." My mom's hands trembled as she tore open the letter, eyes scanning the name at the bottom. Her gaze snapped up to mine. You own this place?" I just nodded. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. They begged. My dad, the man who'd thrown me out into the cold, actually begged me to reconsider. "We don't have anywhere else to go," he muttered, voice cracking. My mom clutched my arm, tears streaking her face. "Please, Mia, we're sorry." I wanted to feel satisfaction, to revel in their desperation, but all I felt was tired. "I was 16, I whispered. "You left me with nothing. Now it's my turn." Their sobs followed me as I walked away, but I didn't turn back. The locks were changed 2 weeks later. I still drive by that house sometimes. It's strange how different it looks now. The once sagging porch has been rebuilt, the peeling paint replaced with a crisp, welcoming cream. There are flower boxes under the windows now, bright blooms swaying gently in the breeze. On warm summer evenings, I'll park down the street and just watch. Kids ride their bikes up and down the road, laughing and ringing their bells, their voices echoing in the same space that used to hold my own cries. The house doesn't feel haunted anymore. It feels like someone has breathed life back into it, as if it's finally free of all the bitterness that once clung to its walls. But every time I see it, I'm reminded of the girl who once lived there, the 16-year-old me who huddled in a bedroom corner, wishing for a miracle. I see her every time I glance in the rearview mirror. She's still there, skinny, scared, and convinced she'll never matter. When I handed my parents that eviction notice, I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought I'd feel powerful. I thought it would heal something in me. For years, I carried that night with me. The slam of the door, the sting of betrayal, the bitter cold of standing outside with nowhere to go. It was my origin story, my drive, my fuel. So when I stood on that porch, looking into my mother's shocked face, hearing my father's voice break as he begged, I thought revenge would feel like justice. But it didn't. It felt hollow. The truth is, no amount of success, no degree, no promotion, no bank balance, and not even evicting the people who hurt you the most can magically erase the pain they caused. What it can do is prove that pain doesn't define you anymore. That night, I walked away with my head high, not because I won, but because I had finally broken free from needing their approval, their love, or even their apology. You see, people always told me that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water. I used to believe that too. I used to think something was wrong with me because I couldn't make them love me the way I needed. I thought if I was smarter, prettier, or quieter, maybe they'd stop yelling. Maybe my dad wouldn't drink so much. Maybe my mom wouldn't look at me like I was a burden. But the truth is, sometimes your family is the source of your deepest wounds, and that's not your fault. What healed me wasn't revenge, it was kindness. It was the Thompsons taking me in, Ella sneaking me cookies when I couldn't sleep, and Mrs. Thompson hugging me so tight on graduation day that I cried harder than I'd cried in years. It was teachers who stayed late to help me catch up. It was coworkers who became friends. It was therapy. Sitting in that safe office, shaking as I told a stranger about my parents for the first time, and hearing her say, "You didn't deserve that." Rebuilding yourself after trauma is exhausting. It's slow. It's lonely. There were nights I cried myself to sleep on a thrift store mattress, wondering if I'd ever stop feeling like that scared 16-year-old girl. But every paycheck I saved, every skill I learned, every step forward was proof that I could rewrite my own story. That eviction notice wasn't really about revenge, it was closure. It was me saying, I am no longer powerless. I wasn't that kid anymore, begging for scraps of affection from people who saw me as disposable. I was a woman who built her own future. And if I'm honest, that night taught me something even deeper. Power without empathy isn't strength. It's just another kind of cruelty. I didn't raise the rent after they left. I could have, easily. I could have sold the place for a massive profit. Instead, I renovated it, made it beautiful, and rented it to a young family with two little kids. I kept the rent reasonable because I remembered what it was like to fear eviction notices, to wonder if you'd have a roof over your head next month. It was my way of breaking the cycle, of turning a place that once held so much pain into a safe haven for someone else. Do I forgive my parents? I don't know. Forgiveness isn't a neat little bow you tie around trauma. It's complicated. Some days I feel pity for them. They were broken people too. Other days I feel anger boiling up, remembering my mother's sneer as she shoved me out the door, or my father's fists clenching at his sides. But what I do know is that their choices don't define me anymore. I am not their mistakes. And if you're listening to this, maybe you've been there too. Maybe you know what it's like to sit at a dinner table in silence, trying not to breathe too loudly because even that might set someone off. Maybe you've been told you're worthless so many times you started to believe it. Maybe you've been thrown away by the very people who were supposed to protect you. If that's you, hear me. You are not broken, you are not worthless, and you are not alone. Your past doesn't determine your future. The pain they caused doesn't have to be your whole story. I am living proof that you can crawl out of the darkest place imaginable and build a life you're proud of. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but it's possible. When I see that house now, with its fresh paint and cheerful garden, I don't feel hatred anymore. I don't even feel sadness. I feel proud. Proud of the scared girl who survived long enough to grow into the woman I am today. Proud that I turned my pain into power. Proud that I became the kind of person I needed when I was younger. That's what real revenge is, not hurting the people who hurt you, but thriving despite them. Living well, choosing kindness, building a life so full of love and safety that their cruelty has no power over you anymore. So here's the lesson I want you to take from my story. You owe nothing to the people who abused you, abandoned you, or made you feel small. You don't owe them your time, your forgiveness, or your loyalty. Your only job is to heal and create a life that makes you feel safe, happy, and loved. And sometimes, family isn't the people who share your blood. Family is the people who open their doors when yours are slammed in your face. And if you don't have that yet, if you're still in the dark part of your story, I promise you this. One day, you'll look back at the place that broke you, and you'll realize it doesn't hold power over you anymore. You'll walk away with your head high, and maybe, just maybe, you'll even turn that place into something beautiful, just like I did. Because healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about reclaiming your future.